Mick Philpott, a father who set his own house on fire and 6 kids didn't make it. The Derby arson, the case that stunned Britain. In this true crime story, we look at how Mick turned being a dad into a show and turned love into leverage. Before we get into it, just prepare yourself, okay? This is a real case with some heartbreaking details, but no graphic or horror stuff here. We're not here to judge. We're here to understand, to remember, and to help make sure this never happens again. Mick Philpott was 56 at the time. Now he's 69. Unemployed, 17 kids with 5 women. Mairead, also known as Maureen Philpott, was 50 then, now about 63. Mick's wife. The victims were 6 children. Jade, 10, John, 9, Jack, 7, Jesse, 6, Jaden, 5, and Dwayne, 13. This all unfolded in Derby, Derbyshire, England. People say every kid deserves a parent, but not every parent deserves a kid, right? For Mick, his kids weren't really family. They were income, benefits, a stage for his ego, proof he was in control. He chased attention, and the folks around him in Derby would pay for that. Today, we're digging into the case that shocked Britain, a plan that ended 6 young lives. What pushed them there? Born in 1956, Philpott's name would later be linked to 17 children, 5 women, and one of the worst family tragedies in modern British history. If you thought Philpott fathered so many children out of love, the truth will shock you. He was not a father figure. He was controlling, explosive, and toxic to the most vulnerable people around him. At 19, he starts seeing Kim Hill. She's only 15. At first, she thinks she's found a protector. Instead, she's trapped. He'd snap over the smallest things, once even hitting her in public with a pool cue, another time leaving her with serious injuries. When he was in the army, he'd come home, accuse Kim of cheating, and then it would turn violent. At one point, it got extreme, a crossbow, all because he thought her skirt was too short. Even with the injuries, Kim kept going to school and made up stories to cover for him. 2 years of this. July 1978. Kim writes to say it's over. That night, he breaks into the house and attacks Kim and her mom while they're sleeping. Kim ends up with more than 20 wounds. Her mom's hurt too, and somehow they both survive. In critical condition, her mother, a nurse, crawled to the phone to call 911. Paramedics found Philpott on the stairs, holding a stained knife, saying, "I won't bother her, she'll die." Kim went into cardiac arrest twice, in the ambulance and on the operating table, and suffered multiple injuries to her organs. In court, Mick lied, said he was defending himself, but the evidence just didn't match. He was convicted of attempted homicide and grievous bodily harm, got 7.5 years, served just over 3. After prison, he sends this "I'm sorry" letter, and even proposes to Kim. The trauma never really left. Decades later, she's still in therapy and tells people the same thing. Don't say no to Mick Philpott. He doesn't understand, no. After he got out in '86, he married Pamela Lomax. They had 3 kids, and pretty fast, the same pattern shows up. Control, jealousy, and violence. Pamela leaves. Not long after, he starts seeing Heather Kehoe. She's just 14 in 1993. By the time she turned 16, she had run away from her parents to live with him. The couple had 2 sons together. Philpott became domineering, assaulting her for not having a daughter, and even teaching his older sons to imitate his treatment of their mother. When Heather was unable to conceive, her punishment was being locked in the garden. She told police he once held and threatened her with a knife when she tried to escape. Heather eventually had to climb over a fence to escape, forcing her to leave her children until she regained custody after a years-long fight. To Heather, Philpott was a Jekyll and Hyde type of man, charming at first, but turning into a nightmare. In the year 2000, he met Mairead Duffy, a young single mother. He presented himself as a rescuer, inviting her into his home and quickly earning her trust. After their daughter Jade was born, Philpott proposed to Mairead while she was still in the hospital. But it didn't stop there. Soon after, he began another relationship, this time with Lisa Willis, a young woman who had also been through difficult times. Lisa later moved into the same home, and under Philpott's influence, the two women became close, raising their children together in what they believed was a shared household. The pattern repeated itself. Individuals looking for stability drawn into a situation controlled entirely by one man. He and Mairead married in 2003, with Lisa serving as bridesmaid. By then, he had built his own small empire. 2 women, many children, and full control over both homes. Over the years, they all lived together in a council house with 11 children between them. Mairead and Lisa both worked, while Philpott stayed home, managing the household finances and relying on government benefits. Philpott was keen to have more children, seeing it as a way to increase his pension. He asked the council for a larger house to accommodate his growing family, but was refused because there were no vacant properties.
Mairead married Mick in 2003.
Would you take Mairead Caroline to be your wife? Would you love her, comfort her, honor and...
Philpott loved attention. He appeared on talk shows arguing that the government owed him a bigger house. In 2007, Philpott appeared confidently boasting of his unconventional lifestyle. He justified his lack of work by blaming media smears and his criminal past. When questioned, Philpott lost control and challenged the host. On air, he introduced his wife Mairead and his lover Lisa Willis, proudly declaring that they lived together. He declared that he was willing to divorce one to marry the other, then divorce again, just so that both of them could feel loved. The audience was shocked, and the media called him the man living on the most benefits in Britain, with an income of £25,000 a year. But his campaign to gain public support for a bigger house was a complete failure.
Today I want to discover the man behind the headlines and uncover the truth about the guy who has been branded Britain's biggest scrounger.
Listen, you're going to criticise my family, pal, and my kids. I'll criticise you as much as I want.
Sorry,
this is a free country.
In that same year, Philpott returned in a special documentary. Conservative MP Anne Widdecombe spent a week living with him, trying to help him change. She arranged 3 jobs for him, one at a barrel factory, but Philpott didn't show up on the first day. In the film, he was seen living in a caravan in the middle of his garden where his wife and mistress took turns sleeping. Anne Widdecombe noted that Philpott cared for no one but himself and often used derogatory language when talking about the 2 women in his life. What shocked her most was that none of the children actively sought their father's affection. And despite the outward appearance of an unusually harmonious family, jealousy and conflict were brewing inside.
And I've got my kids, and I've got my family. That's all I care about. Nothing else.
Don't say so then. Don't say so then.
Can I just get if I could get the distribution of children right? Is
I've
that
got
right?
3 with my first marriage.
Yeah.
2 with another young lady. 5 with Mairead.
Yeah.
4 with Lisa. And 1 with another young lady. And
Right.
2 on the way.
That's 15 now,
Plus
2 on the way.
Plus 1 when I was in the armed services, which I've never met.
Philpott asked Mairead for a divorce 3 times, just so he could marry Lisa. In 2010, police intervened when he slapped Mairead and dragged her outside by her hair. In February 2012, Lisa decided she'd had enough. She told Mairead she was taking her 5 children swimming, but instead, she never came back. She'd escaped, moving in with her sister. For Philpott, it wasn't just about losing Lisa. It meant losing her 5 children and the benefits that came with them. So he came up with a plan. One so reckless that no one who knew him believed he would actually try it. They decided to set fire to the house, with the children asleep and unaware inside, and blame Lisa. The plot was carefully planned, just 1 day before the custody hearing. Philpott believed that if the house burned down, he could emerge as the hero father who saved his children and win back everything, from his children to his huge child support. But that plan was a pre-written tragedy. It was just before 4 a.m., May 11, 2012, when neighbors on Victory Road in Derby woke to the sound of children screaming. The Philpott house was burning, flames already pouring through the letterbox and racing up the stairs. Inside were 6 children, all asleep. 5 of them were found unresponsive at the scene. 13-year-old Duane was rushed to hospital, but 2 days later, he too passed away. All 6 succumbed to smoke inhalation. Fire investigators said temperatures in the upstairs bedrooms exceeded 500 degrees Celsius. None of the children had a chance of escaping alive. Police determined the fire was intentionally started with gasoline poured through a mailbox, officially classifying it as arson. 6 children were declared victims of an unlawful killing, homicide.
I can't get them back in the kitchen. Yeah, terrorist house. Yeah, we've got the police on the way. Have you any idea what's caused the fire? I've no idea, mate, but it's been woke up by the alarm.
All 6 children were Mairead and Philpott's, except for Duane, Mairead's son from a previous relationship. Jade, 10, bright and well-liked by her teachers. John, 9, cheerful, polite, and helpful. Jaden, 5, loved to be held in the arms of his family. Jack, shy and quiet, the gentlest, softest boy in the family. Jesse, 6, remembered as the bubbly one, always making everyone laugh. And Duane, 13, the oldest brother, thoughtful, mature, and protective of his younger siblings. The locals couldn't imagine that anyone, let alone their father, could do this. In fact, this only showed one thing. Philpott knew how to manipulate people's trust. Lisa Willis and her brother-in-law were initially investigated, but were quickly cleared. Philpott, on the other hand, began to reveal things that made people confused. He smiled and talked to the media, appeared calm when he came to view the remains of his children, even joked and once grabbed the liaison officer by the neck. At the press conference, he and Mairead thanked the public, announced that Duane's organs would be donated to save another child. There was something about this image of a grieving father that just didn't fit. Philpott also flirted with a female police officer, calling her beautiful, and implying that he wanted to see her again.
And we can't express our gratitude to everybody that's been concerned with the case, with what's been going on. I've actually been down to our home, and what we saw, we just cannot believe it. We grew up in a community that's had a lot of problems with violence and God knows what else, and to see this community to come together like they have, it's just too overwhelming.
A petrol can and a glove were found near the house. In November, forensic experts determined that Philpott and Mosley's clothes had traces of petrol. Detectives planted recording devices in their hotel room, where they were staying after the fire. These recordings contained incriminating statements from Philpott, in which he admits, "It's my fault we lost our children. You're sticking with the story, yeah?" He talked about fingerprints on a window, about going out for a drive at night, and about keeping their stories straight. At one point, Mairead cried, and he told her he was proud of her for not breaking.
Tell me what you said to me. What you said about how many times you went up ladders.
I almost count how many times I went up the ladders.
What did you say about me trying to get in?
You tried everything you could to get in. Like I said to him, I wanted to run through the flames up the stairs.
What did you cry when you were saying it? How bad?
Not really, really bad, but I did cry.
That's hysterical. It's my fault that our family's gone. It's my fault we lost our children. It's my fault we lost the other part children. It's my fault we lost Lisa. I should have seen it all coming up. It is my fault.
There's a fingerprint on the window.
That's it.
A few discrepancies. That's all it is. When we shake about, I said we're going to go out for a drive at night. I can't remember saying that. Vicky said you were stoned. That's it, we didn't smoke.
Even worse, one recording captured a shocking moment. Mairead performing an intimate act on Paul Mosley, their friend and accomplice, while Mick watched. He encouraged it, telling her it would keep Mosley loyal. That same night, he bragged that he'd tried everything to get into the burning house, the same lie he would later repeat on television. By late May, both Mick and Mairead were arrested for homicide. Months later, Paul Mosley was charged too. Forensics proved petrol had been poured through the letterbox, the same fuel found on their clothes. It was clear this was arson, not accident. Investigators believed the goal was to frame Lisa Willis, regain custody of her children, and reclaim the benefits Mick lost. He had planned to start the fire, rescue his kids, and look like a hero in front of the court. But the fire spread too fast. His own children never stood a chance. The trial began in April 2013 at Nottingham Crown Court. The murder charges were downgraded to manslaughter. Prosecutors proved intent to cause harm, but not to cause death. In court, jurors heard the secret recordings, the lies, the manipulations, the way Mick laughed while describing the fire. Psychologists called him clinically psychopathic, a man who saw children as property, not people. The judge said it clearly.
In reaching the conclusion she did, she gave very cogent and clear reasons for it. She assessed against her primary findings of fact the blameworthiness of Mairead Philpott and arrived at a sentence that reflected that very severe degree of blameworthiness, together with the immeasurable harm she had caused by the killing of her 6 children, for whom, like any other mother, she had an absolute responsibility. We have, after an examination of the circumstances and a careful consideration of the judge's ruling, come to the conclusion without any hesitation that this appeal must be dismissed.
These 6 children died because their mother put her husband first. Mick Philpott was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 15 years. Mairead and Mosley received 17 years each, serving at least 8.5 before parole. In November 2020, Mairead was released halfway through her sentence, given a new identity and police protection. Mosley was released the following year, briefly re-imprisoned for violating parole. Mick Philpott remains behind bars, still serving his term. To the public, the case became a symbol of greed, control, and the failure to protect the innocent. To investigators, it was one of the rare times hardened detectives admitted they cried. The parole board announced today that Mosley will likely be released after a hearing on October 24th. In the report, they wrote, after carefully considering a number of factors, including the seriousness of the offense, his rehabilitation, and the evidence presented at the hearing, the board finds that continued detention is no longer necessary to ensure public safety. Under the conditions, Mosley will be required to live at a supervised residence, report any personal relationships to authorities, and strictly follow a curfew. He must also avoid contact with the victim and with minors, and he is prohibited from accessing the internet or using social media. Any violation could result in his parole being revoked immediately. In a statement, the parole board said that it was not necessary to recall Mosley as there has been no evidence of serious offending since his conditional release. A Ministry of Justice spokesperson said, "We recognize the seriousness of this case and extend our deepest condolences to the victims and their families. Paul Mosley remains under intensive supervision and will be recalled immediately if there is any further offending." Mick Philpott is currently serving a life sentence with a minimum of 15 years before he can be considered for parole. His wife, Mairead Philpott, was sentenced to 17 years. She was released in 2020 after serving half of her sentence. Psychologists who studied Philpott later described him as an exhibitionist with antisocial personality disorder. For him, the fire wasn't just a plan gone wrong. It was proof that attention meant more than anything else in his life. 6 small coffins, 1 staged tragedy. The line between grief and guilt has never been thinner. Subscribe to MOPD True Crime Documentary, where every story burns through the lies to find the truth. To conclude, remember that what you've seen is a record of reality, unembellished and unaltered. Our mission is not to glorify the dark, but to learn from it. Through truth, we find perspective. Through empathy, we find meaning.